On February 21st, justice has been deployed. Archangel Michael confirms today's coincidence was a test with a narrow response window. Open immediately. This is not a dramatic headline. This is not emotional exaggeration. This is a spiritual alert. Something shifted on February 21st that many did not see with their natural eyes, but the spirit realm marked it clearly. There was movement. There was authorization. There was a release. And if you are hearing this right now, it is because your name was connected to what was decided. February 21st was not an ordinary day. It carried weight. And carried a verdict. In the unseen realm, justice was deployed like a sealed order sent from a higher court. Archangel Michael, the defender, the protector, the enforcer of divine righteousness, confirms that what unfolded around you today, the interruption, the unexpected message, the delay, the sudden memory, the unusual encounter, was not coincidence. It was a test, and it came with a narrow response window. Heaven does not always announce tests with thunder. Sometimes they come disguised as ordinary moments. A simple decision. A quiet nudge. A brief opportunity to respond differently than you did before. And what made this moment critical was timing. The window was narrow. Not because God wanted to pressure you, but because alignment requires precision. When justice is ready to be deployed, heaven watches for agreement on earth. You may be wondering, what does it mean that justice has been deployed? It means that a case hath been reviewed. It means that what was hidden hath been examined. It means that your patience, your silence, your tears, your restraint, your obedience, all of it was documented. And February 21st became the date when the decision moved from deliberation to execution. Justice is no longer pending. It has been activated. But here is the part that makes this urgent. Before justice was fully released, there was a test. A final check. A moment designed to reveal your posture. Would you react in frustration? Would you step out of character? Would you ignore the quiet instruction? Or would you remain aligned even when you did not yet see the outcome? That coincidence today was not random. It was the measuring point. The reason this message says open immediately is because delay can cost clarity. When divine justice moves, it creates a ripple effect. Doors begin to close that should never reopen. Exposures begin to surface. Protection intensifies. But if someone hesitates in the moment of instruction, they can misinterpret what is happening around them. And heaven does not want you confused in a season of confirmation. Archangel Michael stands in moments like this as a guardian of divine order. He does not move emotionally. He moves strategically. And when he confirms that justice has been deployed, it signals that the battle phase has shifted. What opposed you has reached its boundary. What tried to intimidate you has been reviewed. What attempted to delay your advancement has encountered resistance from a higher authority. This is why today felt unusual. Perhaps something small unsettled you. Perhaps a familiar pattern tried to repeat. Perhaps you sensed pressure that did not make sense. That was not random turbulence. That was the final test brushing against you before the full manifestation of justice. And the response window was narrow because heaven was observing readiness. Why is this important? Because many pray for justice but are not prepared for the responsibility that comes with it. Justice restores balance. It corrects imbalances. It repositions people. It can elevate one and expose another. It can silence accusations. It can remove interference. And when it arrives, it demands spiritual maturity to steward the outcome. You were led to this message because something in you recognized the shift. Even if you could not explain it, you felt it. A sense that something has changed. A quiet awareness that a chapter has closed. February 21st marked that closure in the unseen realm. And now the effects are beginning to surface in the visible. This is not about fear. This is about awareness. It is about understanding that divine timing is precise. When heaven says there was a narrow response window, it means your immediate reaction mattered. Your posture mattered. Your restraint mattered. And if you responded with integrity, with trust, with alignment, then you have positioned yourself under the protection of deployed justice. Open immediately is not about panic. It is about perception. Open your understanding. Open your spiritual awareness. Open your expectation. Because what unfolds next will confirm that this was not coincidence. It was orchestration. And February 21st will be remembered not as a random date, but as the day justice moved in your favor. What makes a divine test so powerful is not its volume, but its subtlety. On February 21st, when justice was deployed in the unseen realm, the confirmation did not arrive with lightning or a public announcement. It arrived quietly. It arrived wrapped inside what looked like an ordinary moment. And that is how heaven measures the heart. You may have expected something dramatic. A sign in the sky. A loud declaration. But instead, what you received was small. A conversation that felt slightly off. A message that stirred something in your spirit. A sudden delay that forced you to choose patience over frustration. Or perhaps a temptation to react in a way you once would have. It was the test. Archangel Michael confirms that today's coincidence was not coincidence at all. It was calibrated. It was precise. It was designed with intention. Because before justice can be fully manifested, heaven examines posture, not performance. Thus your reaction in small moments reveals your readiness for larger responsibility. Think about it carefully. What happened today that seemed minor but carried emotional weight? Was there a moment where you had the opportunity to speak harshly but chose restraint? A moment where you could have doubted but instead chose trust? A moment where you felt overlooked but decided not to chase validation? That was the measuring line. Heaven often tests in whispers. Why? Because whispers reveal who is truly listening. If the test were loud, anyone could respond correctly. But when it appears small, only those who are spiritually alert recognize its significance. February 21st marked a spiritual verdict, but your response to the disguised moment determined how smoothly that verdict would unfold in your life. There is a spiritual law that many overlook. Response determines acceleration. When a narrow window opens, hesitation can delay manifestation. Not because justice is cancelled, but because alignment is delayed. This is why the response window was tight. It was not punishment. It was precision. Some of you felt the urgency but could not explain it. You sensed that your reaction mattered more than usual. That was not imagination. That was discernment. Your spirit recognized that something larger was attached to a seemingly small decision. And here is where this becomes even more profound. The enemy often tries to provoke reaction right before justice is executed. Why? Because if you step out of alignment in the final moment, you may question the outcome when it begins to unfold. But if you remain steady, if you remain composed, if you remain aligned, justice flows without confusion. This is why today's moment was orchestrated to look normal. It had to blend in. If you knew you were being tested, the authenticity of your response would be compromised. Heaven was not looking for perfection. Heaven was looking for sincerity. And if this message is stirring something deep within you, That is confirmation that you recognize the moment. Do not ignore that recognition. Engage with it. Acknowledge it. If this speaks directly to what you experience today, take a moment right now to like this video, share it with someone who needs confirmation, and subscribe to this channel so you remain connected to these timely prophetic warnings. Your engagement does more than support a platform. It spreads awareness. It ensures that someone else who is standing in their own narrow response window receives clarity before they miss it. And I encourage you to comment what happened today, because your testimony could unlock understanding for another person watching silently. There is power in collective agreement. When believers align together, justice accelerates across households, across regions, across lives. The more we acknowledge what heaven is doing, the more we create space for it to manifest clearly. Now understand this carefully. If you felt like you hesitated today, this is not condemnation. It is correction. Sometimes the test reveals areas that still need strengthening. And even that revelation is mercy. Because justice has been deployed, but alignment ensures you can steward it properly. The hidden test was never about failure. It was about preparation. It was about proving that you are no longer who you used to be. That your reactions have matured. That your discernment has sharpened. That your spirit is stable even when provoked. February 21st was a line drawn in the spirit. On one side was delay, frustration, and repeat in cycles. And the other side is order, restoration, and divine correction. The disguised moment you experienced today was the bridge between those two sides. And the question heaven asked was simple: are you ready? The fact that you are here, listening to this confirmation, suggests that you sense the weight of that moment, and that awareness alone signals growth. Because those who are unaware cannot adjust. But those who recognize the test can step fully into the justice that has already been released. What seemed ordinary was never ordinary. It was a doorway. And how you walk through it matters more than you realize. There are moments in the spirit realm when silence breaks, not with noise, but with authority. February 21st was one of those moments. And now, Archangel Michael confirms what many of you have only sensed in fragments. Justice has not only been discussed, it has been sealed. The deployment was not symbolic. It was strategic. It was final. It carried weight. Archangel Michael is not merely a figure of comfort. He is a guardian of divine order. In times of spiritual warfare, he stands at the intersection of protection and enforcement. When justice is delayed in the natural, it does not mean it is denied in the spirit. It means evidence is being reviewed. It means timing is being perfected. And on February 21st, the review reached its conclusion. But here is what must be understood clearly. Divine justice is not revenge. Revenge is emotional. Justice is measured. Revenge seeks to hurt. Justice seeks to restore balance. When heaven deploys justice, it is not about humiliation. It is about correction. It is about setting boundaries in the unseen realm that cannot be crossed again. What happened behind the veil on that day was a closing argument. Every tear you shed in silence was recorded. Every time you chose integrity over retaliation was noted. Every moment you restrained your tongue when you could have defended yourself aggressively became evidence. You may have thought no one saw, but heaven saw. And Archangel Michael confirms that your response during the waiting season carried more weight than the accusations spoken against you. There was an unseen battle surrounding your name. Not because you are weak, but because you are marked for purpose. Opposition does not gather around something insignificant. It gathers around something valuable. And before justice was deployed, There had to be a final confirmation. Would you remain aligned under pressure? That is why today's coincidence was so critical. It was the seal test, the final observation before activation. When the narrow response window opened, your reaction became your testimony. Did you respond with faith or fear? With patience or panic? With trust or tension? The answer determined how smoothly justice would unfold in your favor. Archangel Michael's confirmation is not dramatic, it is deliberate. The verdict has been issued. Restrictions have been placed in the unseen realm. Certain doors that allowed interference have now been shut. Certain voices that tried to intimidate your progress have lost authority. There has been a spiritual boundary drawn around your future. And yet, justice does not always announce itself with applause. Sometimes it begins with subtle shifts. A sudden peace replacing anxiety. A conversation that ends differently than expected. An opportunity that appears without struggle. These are not random. They are evidence that the seal has been applied. You must also understand that heaven observed your growth. There were seasons when you might have reacted differently. There were years when frustration would have controlled your words. But something has changed in you, and the test revealed that change. That is why justice could be deployed without delay. This confirmation is not only about what has ended. It is about what has begun. When Archangel Michael seals a verdict, protection intensifies. Alignment increases. Acceleration follows. The same spiritual realm that once felt contested now begins to cooperate. And here is the emotional truth. Some of you doubted whether your quiet obedience mattered. You wondered if remaining silent was weakness. You questioned whether choosing peace was costing you progress. But February 21st answered that question. Your restraint was strength. Your patience was power. Your obedience was strategy. Now listen closely. The next phase will reveal just how precise this justice is. Unexpected clarity will surface. Hidden motives will expose themselves without your intervention. You will not need to fight for recognition. Recognition will come to you. Because when heaven enforces order, it does so completely. Hold on to this. Because what is about to unfold next will explain why the narrow window was necessary and why the timing could not be extended. You will be glad you are still listening when that revelation comes. Before we continue deeper into this confirmation, there is something sacred about this moment. If this message has confirmed what your spirit already sensed, then your agreement carries power. Type "Justice is mine" in the comments if this resonates with you. Lesson Code 114 is now activated. And as we stand in the sealed moment, understand that what is happening here is not just information, it is activation. When you engage with messages like this, when you share them, when you sow into this mission, you are not supporting a channel. You are helping light reach someone standing in confusion right now. Scripture declares, "Give, and it will be given to you, pressed down, shaken together, and running over." That is not a distant promise. That is God speaking directly into this moment. I feel led to say this clearly. When you release a super thanks, when you step into membership, or when you sow through the PayPal link in the description or the QR code flashing on your screen, you are sowing into the spread of divine justice and clarity for souls who are desperate for confirmation. This is not about obligation. It is about alignment. There is a harvest attached to obedience. Those who sow into light will never walk in darkness. As you give, may protection increase around your household. May doors open without struggle. May justice accelerate in areas you have prayed about for years. This is a prophetic act, not a transaction. Do not delay obedience when you feel the prompting. Move as you are led. Seal your agreement. And prepare your spirit, because the next revelation will uncover why this test had to be narrow and why the outcome will be undeniable. When heaven speaks of a narrow response window, it is not speaking in human terms of pressure or panic. It is speaking in the language of precision. On February 21st, when justice was deployed, the movement in the spirit realm was exact. Nothing was random. Nothing was right. And nothing was delayed. The window that opened before you was narrow because the timing was synchronized with a verdict that had already been sealed. A response window is a divinely measured moment in which your agreement must align with heaven's decision. It is a brief intersection between instruction and action. These windows do not remain open indefinitely, not because God is impatient, but because divine orchestration operates on alignment. When all spiritual elements converge, evidence reviewed, verdict issued, protection assigned, there must be cooperation on earth. This is why hesitation and discernment are not the same thing. Discernment listens. Hesitation stalls. Discernment seeks clarity. Hesitation often hides fear. In the narrow window you encountered, the difference mattered. Heaven was not asking for perfection. It was observing readiness. Could you move when prompted? Could you remain silent when urged? Could you speak when instructed? The window tested sensitivity. Why was it narrow? Because extended delay would have disrupted synchronization. Imagine a door that unlocks only when multiple keys turn at the same time. February 21st was one of those synchronized moments. Justice had been authorized, but the final activation required your posture to match the ruling. The window was brief because precision does not linger. Some of you felt that urgency without understanding it. You sensed that a simple decision carried unusual weight. You may have thought you were overthinking, but in truth, your spirit recognized that timing was delicate. When justice moves from declaration to manifestation, it passes through alignment, and alignment requires responsiveness. Now hear this clearly. If you responded in time, if you chose obedience over impulse, restraint over reaction, faith over frustration, then you stepped fully into the protection of deployed justice. The narrow window became a doorway rather than a barrier. Your response sealed your alignment. But what if you hesitated? What if you felt unsure and delayed your action? This is where mercy becomes visible. Divine windows are narrow, but they are not cruel. Mercy often provides a secondary adjustment period. Not to repeat the test, but to realign the heart. The difference is that the second moment requires quicker awareness. Once you recognize that it was a test, your correction becomes your agreement. The reason heaven uses narrow windows is because expansion requires maturity. When justice is deployed, circumstances begin to rearrange. Opportunities reposition. Conversations change tone. Without spiritual alertness, these shifts can feel confusing. But when you understand that they are part of a verdict unfolding, peace replaces anxiety. A narrow window also reveals focus. In wide-open seasons, distractions multiply. But when timing is tight, clarity sharpens. You were not meant to analyze endlessly. You were meant to trust deeply. That trust is what qualified you to stand under justice without fear. Consider how often in the past you may have missed moments because doubt was louder than discernment. This time was different. Even if your response was quiet, something inside you chose alignment. That shift in you is the evidence of growth. The narrow window was not there to intimidate you. It was there to confirm transformation. There is also another dimension to this window: accountability. When heaven releases justice, it entrusts responsibility. You cannot pray for correction in your favor, and then resist the discipline required to sustain it. The narrow response window ensured that you were not only ready to receive justice but prepared to steward it. And here is something profound. Timing protects you. If the window had remained open too long, interference could have re-entered. Doubt could have gained influence. External voices could have disrupted your clarity. By keeping the window narrow, heaven shielded your decision from contamination. You may begin to notice subtle confirmations now. Situations that once felt unstable will begin to stabilize. Tension will decrease without explanation. Delayed matters will start to resolve quietly. These are not coincidences. They are indicators that your response aligned with the deployment. Even if you are still uncertain about how you performed in that moment, focus on what you do next. Alignment is continuous. Justice may have been deployed on February 21st, but your posture sustains its manifestation. Remain attentive. Remain steady. Remain anchored in trust. The narrow response window was not a threat. It was an invitation. An invitation to step into a season where your reactions no longer sabotage your breakthroughs. A season where your spiritual sensitivity becomes your greatest protection. A season where justice does not intimidate you, it confirms you. And as this understanding settles in, you will begin to see why the timing had to be exact. Because what unfolds next is not random progression. It is the visible evidence of a ruling that has already been enforced. Here was a sign. Not loud. Not dramatic. Not impossible to ignore, but easy to dismiss. That is how heaven often communicates in moments of testing. On February 21st, when justice was deployed and the narrow response window opened, the sign you received was intentionally subtle. It had to be. If it had been overwhelming, it would have forced your reaction instead of revealing your heart. Think back carefully. What happened that felt slightly unusual? Perhaps you notice repeating numbers at a specific hour. Perhaps someone mentioned a word that echoed a prayer you had whispered in private. Perhaps an unexpected call interrupted your routine. Maybe a delay forced you to pause when you wanted to rush. Or maybe a sudden memory resurfaced, one you had not thought about in years. That was not random mental noise. That was spiritual camouflage. Heaven often hides its signals inside ordinary patterns. The reason is simple. Authenticity. When something looks ordinary, your response is genuine. There is no performance. There is no dramatized obedience. There is only instinct shaped by growth. The sign you almost dismissed carried more weight than you realized because it was the final indicator before justice transitioned from spiritual decree to earthly manifestation. Many people expect divine communication to feel mystical or overwhelming. But in truth, it often feels like a quiet nudge. A hesitation before speaking. A calm voice inside urging restraint. A subtle discomfort warning you not to engage in something you once would have entertained. The power of the sign was not in its volume, it was in its timing. Why did it look normal? Because if you recognized it immediately as supernatural, you might have overanalyzed it. You might have hesitated out of fear of making the wrong move. Instead, it appeared wrapped in routine. And in that routine, your character responded. There is a danger in over-rationalizing spiritual nudges. When something stirs your spirit, but logic immediately dismisses it, you can miss the opportunity to align. The mind seeks explanation. The spirit seeks obedience. The sign you encountered was positioned at the intersection of those two forces. Some of you felt a sudden urge to apologize when you normally would have justified yourself. Others felt the urge to stay silent instead of defending. Some felt prompted to decline an invitation or withdraw from a conversation that did not sit right. Those impulses were not weakness. They were signals. They were heaven's way of asking, will you trust the internal guidance even when it seems small? The reason the sign had to appear ordinary is because justice had already been authorized. The test was not about whether justice would come, it was about how smoothly it would flow into your life. Your response to the sign either removed resistance or created friction. Now here is something profound. Immediately after that sign, something shifted. Perhaps you felt unexpected peace. Perhaps tension dissolved without confrontation. Perhaps nothing dramatic happened at all, but internally, something settled. That settling was confirmation that you aligned correctly. For those who almost dismissed it but caught themselves in time, that correction mattered. Even a brief pause to reconsider can realign destiny. The narrow response window allowed for awareness, not perfection. The sign was not testing your intelligence. It was testing your attentiveness. It is also important to recognize that the enemy often attempts to camouflage distractions as coincidences at the same time heaven releases signs. The difference lies in the outcome. Distractions create confusion. Divine signs create clarity, even if subtle. If the moment left you with a sense of steadiness, it was not distraction. It was direction. You may now realize that what felt like an interruption was actually protection. What felt like inconvenience was alignment. What felt like an emotional trigger was an invitation to demonstrate maturity. The sign you almost dismissed was strategically placed at the edge of your breakthrough. February 21st was not just about justice being deployed. It was about transition. Transition requires awareness. Without recognizing the sign, you could have carried old reactions into a new season. But by responding differently, even slightly, you signaled readiness. There is also a deeper layer here. The sign was not only about that specific moment. It was about pattern breaking. Heaven wanted to confirm that cycles had ended, that you no longer react as you once did, that you have grown beyond former triggers. The sign was a mirror, and what it reflected determined what could now be entrusted to you. As justice unfolds, you will likely see evidence that the sign mattered. Conversations will shift in your favor. Resistance will decrease. Opportunities may surface quietly. And you may look back and realize that the small decision you made in that ordinary moment positioned you for something greater. Do not underestimate subtlety. In the spirit realm, small alignments create massive shifts. The sign you almost dismissed was not insignificant. It was strategic. It was the final checkpoint before manifestation. And now that you see it clearly, your awareness increases. You will not overlook the next nudge. You will not silence the next whisper. Because you understand that heaven often hides its greatest movements inside the most ordinary frames. The sign was not there to confuse you. It was there to confirm you. And because you recognized it, whether immediately or after reflection, you are standing on the right side of deployed justice. Now we must talk about what is happening in this very moment, because when justice is deployed in the spirit realm, movement begins immediately, even if the natural eye is not yet caught up. February 21st was not symbolic. It was operational. Something shifted from review to execution. And once execution begins, reversal is no longer possible. When divine justice is deployed, it does not always arrive like a storm. Often, it moves like a restructuring. Systems rearrange. Access points close. Authority transfers. What once seemed immovable begins to weaken without visible force. Justice does not need noise to be effective. It needs authorization. and that authorization has already been given. You may begin to notice subtle but undeniable changes. Conversations that once carried tension may suddenly lose their intensity. People who held influence over certain areas of your life may begin to step back without explanation. Situations that lingered in uncertainty may start to clarify themselves. These are not coincidences. These are indicators that enforcement has begun. One of the first signs that justice has been deployed is containment. What tried to expand against you will no longer have permission to grow. Hidden opposition will feel restrained. Teams that once seemed to advance effortlessly will stall. Not because of your intervention, but because boundaries have been set in the unseen realm. There is also exposure attached to divine justice. Not exposure driven by humiliation, but exposure driven by truth. Motives that were concealed will surface naturally. You will not need to confront them aggressively. Light has a way of revealing what darkness tried to protect. And when exposure comes through justice, it carries protection for you. Another shift that often occurs is restoration of stability. If you have felt emotionally unsettled for weeks or months, pay attention to your inner atmosphere now. Justice brings order. Order produces peace. Even before external outcomes fully manifest, internal equilibrium begins to return. A sense of constant spiritual friction starts to fade. You may also notice unexpected favor. Not dramatic elevation, but quiet positioning. A door that opens without struggle. A conversation that goes in your favor without effort. An opportunity that seems to align perfectly with your current season. These are not random blessings. They are recalibrations. When justice is deployed, protection intensifies. Archangel Michael's assignment includes guarding the perimeter of what has been restored. That means interference will not be allowed to operate freely as it once did. There will be resistance against those who attempt to disrupt what heaven has stabilized. It is important to understand that justice is not only about correcting what was wrong. It is also about securing what is right. You are not merely being defended, you are being positioned. The deployment signals that you are stepping into a phase where alignment replaces struggle. Some may wonder why manifestation can appear gradual if justice has already been authorized. The answer lies in integration. When something shifts in the spirit realm, the natural realm adjusts accordingly. Just as a verdict is announced before the physical changes follow, so it is here. The declaration came first. The visible outcomes follow in sequence. Do not interpret gradual unfolding as delay. It is establishment. Justice that unfolds steadily lasts longer. Rapid reversals without structure collapse easily. But when heaven builds through enforcement, it secures longevity. There is also a deeper layer to what is happening now, restraint of repetition. Cycles that once repeated without interruption are being interrupted permanently. Patterns of injustice, misunderstanding, or spiritual attack are encountering limitation. What tried to restart will find itself blocked. You may feel a growing confidence inside you, not arrogance, but steadiness. That steadiness is not self-generated. It is the atmosphere of justice settling over your life. It is the awareness that something has shifted in your favor, even if you cannot yet articulate how. Pay attention in the coming days to subtle confirmations. Watch how certain conflicts dissolve without confrontation. Notice how clarity replaces confusion. Observe how you feel less compelled to defend yourself. These are signs that enforcement is active. And here is something crucial. Do not attempt to accelerate what is already in motion. When justice is deployed, your role shifts from striving to stewarding. Remain aligned. Remain disciplined. Remain observant. Let the unfolding occur without forcing outcomes. There will be moments when you realize that what once intimidated you no longer carries the same weight. The emotional charge attached to certain memories will weaken. The fear of certain possibilities will fade. That is not denial. It is deliverance through order. February 21st marked the activation. What is happening now is implementation. You are not waiting for justice. You are witnessing its progression. And as it continues to unfold, you will recognize that what once felt chaotic is now moving with precision. This is not a temporary adjustment. It is a reestablishment of boundaries. And once those boundaries are in place, you will begin to understand why the timing had to be exact and why your response during the narrow window was so critical. Justice has been deployed. And what is happening now is the quiet, undeniable evidence that heaven has taken action. There is an image that explains everything that unfolded on February 21st. It is not chaotic. It is not emotional. It is structured. Imagine a courtroom, not an earthly one filled with confusion and human bias, but a heavenly courtroom where nothing is hidden and nothing is distorted. This is where your name was spoken. This is where your season was reviewed. This is where justice was not debated for popularity, but determined by truth. In this courtroom, evidence is not gathered through opinion. It is gathered through record. Every silent prayer you whispered when no one understood your pain was entered into evidence. Every time you chose integrity over retaliation became a documented statement. Every moment you resisted the urge to defend yourself harshly was registered as strength, not weakness. The spiritual courtroom is not a place of intimidation for the faithful. It is a place of clarification. On February 21st, your case reached a decisive moment. The waiting period was not neglect. It was review. Timing was not delay. It was preparation. And when the final review concluded, the ruling was issued. Justice has been deployed. But what makes this courtroom moment so powerful is that your behavior during the waiting season was part of the evidence. Your silence testified. Your patience testified. Even your tears testified. What felt invisible to you was visible in that courtroom. What felt unnoticed on earth was recorded in heaven. Now understand something important. The opposition had arguments. There were accusations. There were attempts to disqualify you based on past reactions, past mistakes, past immaturity. But growth is admissible evidence. Transformation is admissible evidence. And your recent posture carried more weight than your history. This is why the narrow response window was necessary before the verdict was enforced. It was the final observation. Would your current response confirm your growth? Would your reaction validate your readiness? The disguised moment you experienced was like a final question posed before the ruling became irreversible. And when you responded differently than you once would have, when you held your peace, when you trusted instead of reacted, when you chose restraint over impulse, you strengthened your case. That small moment echoed loudly in the courtroom. It confirmed that you were no longer operating from the same emotional patterns that once created vulnerability. When the verdict was released, it was not loud. It did not require spectacle. Authority does not shout. It declares. And the declaration carried weight. Boundaries were drawn. Assignments were adjusted. Access was revoked where it had been misused. Protection was reinforced. The sound of justice in the unseen realm is not chaotic. It is final. It is the closing of a file that will not be reopened. It is the stamping of a document that says, resolve. And when that stamp was placed on your case, a shift began immediately. You may not have heard a gavel strike, but you may have felt something settle. A quiet knowing. A subtle release of tension. A sense that something had concluded even if the physical circumstances had not yet visibly changed. That internal shift was the echo of the verdict. There is also something deeply personal about this courtroom moment. You were not just defended, you were validated. Your endurance was acknowledged. Your discipline was honored. Your growth was recognized. Justice is not only about correcting wrongs. It is about affirming righteousness. Now, as the enforcement of that verdict unfolds, remember this image. When doubt tries to whisper that nothing has changed, recall the courtroom. When impatience tempts you to force outcomes, remember that the ruling has already been issued. You are not fighting for justice. You are standing under it. Some outcomes may unfold gradually, but they are unfolding under authority. Situations that once felt unstable will stabilize because the decision has already been made. Conversations that once felt unpredictable will carry clarity because the verdict has shaped the atmosphere around you. The spiritual courtroom moment also signals something else. You are entering a season where your words carry more weight. After justice is deployed, credibility increases. When you speak, you will notice greater influence, not because you demand it, but because it has been granted. And here is the deeper revelation. The courtroom was not only about your past, it was about your future. Justice clears the path for advancement. It removes lingering disputes so that promotion is not contaminated by unresolved conflict. The verdict did more than defend you. It prepared you. As you move forward, carry yourself like someone whose case has been resolved. Walk with steadiness. Speak with clarity. Resist the urge to revisit what has already been ruled upon. The file is closed. The boundaries are set. The decision stands. February 21st was the day the ruling was stamped. What you are experiencing now is the unfolding of that decree. And the more you align with that reality, the more visible its effects will become. The courtroom has spoken. Justice hath been deployed. And what comes next will confirm that the ruling was not temporary, it was transformational. There is one more thing that must be spoken clearly before we move forward. Even though justice has been deployed and the verdict has been sealed, there remains a final layer of urgency. Not because the ruling is unstable, but because alignment must be maintained. February 21st marked the activation. But activation requires cooperation. And for some listening right now, there is still a small adjustment to make before the window fully closes. This is not about fear. It is about awareness. When heaven moves with precision, it does not drag its timing. The narrow response window you encountered was the initial test. But sometimes, after the first movement of justice, a grace period follows. Not to repeat the test, but to allow correction if needed. If you recognize that you hesitated, reacted emotionally, or dismissed the sign when it first appeared, do not allow shame to silence you. Shame paralyzes. Awareness empowers. The final warning is not condemnation, it is invitation. Realign now. Correct now. Respond now. Even a quiet internal shift of agreement can reposition you under the flow of what has already been authorized. Justice does not punish growth, it supports it. But resistance creates unnecessary friction. If you are sensing conviction in this moment, that is not rejection. That is refinement. The Spirit often whispers before the door fully seals. And right now, that whisper is saying, adjust quickly. How do you align immediately? First, release pride. If there is a conversation that needs humility, initiate it. If there is a reaction that needs correction, acknowledge it. If there is an instruction you felt but delayed, act on it. Do not overthink. Do not dramatize. Precision requires decisiveness. There is acceleration in the atmosphere now. Things will begin moving more quickly than before. That is why alignment matters even more. When acceleration increases, small missteps can feel amplified. But when alignment is steadied, acceleration becomes momentum instead of chaos. Some of you may feel a subtle tension as you listen. Not anxiety, but alertness. That is discernment responding to urgency. The final warning is gentle but firm. Do not drift. Do not grow passive. Do not assume that because justice has been deployed, attentiveness is no longer necessary. Stay spiritually awake. You may begin to notice confirmation very soon, perhaps within days. A shift in tone. An unexpected opening. A sudden exposure of truth. When these things happen, do not react emotionally. Remain steady. Justice unfolding can be dramatic in appearance, but your role is calm stewardship. And here is something important. When heaven accelerates justice, it also accelerates separation. Certain relationships may distance naturally. Certain opportunities may dissolve. Certain environments may no longer feel aligned. Do not cling to what is being released. When justice closes a door, it is protecting your future. This is why the warning comes before the full manifestation. It is preparation. It ensures that when visible changes occur, you are not shaken. You are not surprised. You are not tempted to step outside the alignment you worked so hard to establish. If you have already responded correctly, then this warning serves as reinforcement. Stay steady. Continue choosing restraint. Continue trusting quiet instruction. Continue walking in integrity even when no one applauds you. Justice thrives in consistency. What unfolds next will confirm everything that has been spoken. You will see evidence that this was not imagination. You will recognize that February 21st was not an ordinary date. And you will understand why the response window had to be narrow. Before we move further, seal your agreement in this moment. Type "I receive divine alignment" in the comments. Blessing code 392 is now activated. And as you step into this alignment, remember that spreading this message is part of the assignment. When you sow into this mission, through super thanks, through membership, or through the PayPal link in the description or the QR code on your screen, you are not funding content. You are fueling clarity for souls standing in their own narrow window right now. Scripture declares that those who sow beside still waters will reap in due season. This is that season. I declare that as you give, acceleration will meet your obedience. May protection expand over your household. May doors open that no opposition can close. May divine justice manifest swiftly in areas where you have waited longest. This is not a casual offering. It is a prophetic act of agreement. Move as you are led. Do not delay the prompting. Act with confidence. And hold this close. What unfolds next will confirm that the warning was mercy, not pressure. You will be grateful that you listened when the whisper called you to adjust. The next 24 hours are not ordinary. When justice has been deployed and a narrow response window has just passed, the first day that follows becomes sacred. It is a stabilization period. It is a sealing period. It is a positioning period. What you do now will not determine whether justice was released. That decision has already been made. But it will determine how smoothly you walk into its manifestation. First, shift into intentional awareness. Do not rush into noise. Do not flood your mind with distractions. The next 24 hours require spiritual sensitivity. This is not about isolating yourself from life. It is about becoming attentive to subtle instruction. When heaven moves, it often follows with guidance, and guidance requires stillness to be heard. Take time to pray, not long, dramatic prayers, but sincere alignment prayers. Acknowledge what has happened in the unseen. Thank God for justice even if you have not yet seen visible proof. Gratitude seals activation. Gratitude signals trust, and trust strengthens the flow of what has already begun. Second, guard your words. The first 24 hours after a spiritual verdict are critical. Avoid unnecessary arguments. Avoid defending yourself prematurely. Avoid revisiting old frustrations. Words spoken in emotional haste can create interference. Justice does not need your force, it needs your steadiness. If there is someone you feel prompted to forgive, do it now. Not because they deserve it, but because forgiveness keeps your spirit clear. Unforgiveness creates internal resistance, and you are stepping into a season that requires internal clarity. Forgiveness is not weakness, it is alignment. If you sense that you delayed your response during the narrow window, this is your moment to correct it. Send the message. Make the call. Withdraw from the situation you felt warned about. Act decisively but calmly. Correction within 24 hours carries power. It signals humility and responsiveness. Also, observe without reacting. Over the next day, you may notice subtle shifts. A conversation that changes tone. A person who distances. An opportunity that emerges unexpectedly. Do not interpret immediately. Just observe. Justice unfolding can look like disruption before it looks like restoration. There may also be exposure. Truths may surface naturally. Information may come to light. If that happens, resist the urge to celebrate prematurely or retaliate emotionally. Remain composed. When justice reveals truth, your role is dignity, not drama. Silence will be your strength in this period. Silence does not mean passivity. It means confidence. You do not need to prove what heaven has already confirmed. Let outcomes speak for themselves. This is also a time to examine your environment. Are there influences that disrupt your peace? Are there patterns that no longer align with the direction you feel called toward? Make quiet adjustments. Remove what feels misaligned. Strengthen what feels stable. Within the next 24 hours, posture yourself as someone who expects alignment, not conflict. Wake up with steadhahen. Speak with calm assurance. Carry yourself like someone whose case has already been resolved. And if this message is confirming what you have sensed in your spirit, engage with it actively. Like this video. Share it with someone who may be standing in their own decisive moment. Subscribe to this channel so you remain aligned with these timely confirmations. And comment what you are sensing right now. Your testimony could unlock clarity for someone else watching in silence. Collective agreement amplifies spiritual momentum. Now hear this carefully. The next 24 hours are not about striving for proof. They are about securing posture. If nothing dramatic happens immediately, do not doubt. Justice unfolding often begins quietly. Roots strengthen before fruit appears. There is one more thing you must hold close. Do not reopen what has been closed. If a door shuts in the next day, let it shut. If someone withdraws, let them withdraw. If something ends, allow it to end. Reopening closed doors can create unnecessary delay. Trust the process. At the same time, if a door opens without struggle, walk through it confidently. Do not second-guess favor. Do not sabotage opportunity out of fear that it seems too easy. Justice often removes obstacles so that what is meant for you no longer requires excessive effort. In these 24 hours, balance prayer with practicality. Continue your responsibilities. Fulfill your commitments. But remain internally alert. Alignment is not dramatic. It is disciplined. And here is something you must not forget. What happens next will validate everything. You may not see it instantly, but confirmation is coming. Subtle at first, undeniable later. When it does, remember this moment. Remember that you chose steadiness over impulse. The next 24 hours are your opportunity to walk as someone protected, not pressured. Secured, not striving. Aligned, not anxious. Justice hath been deployed. Now posture yourself to receive its full manifestation. When justice is deployed, protection follows. They are not separate movements. They are twin assignments. February 21st was not only a verdict day, it was a sealing day. And that seal did not rest on you alone. It extended outward. It extended to your household. It extended to what concerns you. It extended to what carries your name. There is a reason why, after justice is activated, a shift in atmosphere can be felt within the home. You may notice a subtle calmness, a reduction in tension, a lessening of unexplained agitation. That is not imagination. When divine order is established, it does not stop at the individual. It surrounds the territory connected to them. Archangel Michael's role is not only enforcement in the courtroom of heaven but guardianship at the gates. When justice hath been confirmed, a perimeter is reinforced. Access points that once allowed interference begin to close. Spiritual vulnerabilities that once felt exposed begin to strengthen. Your household is not just a physical space. It is a spiritual jurisdiction. It includes your family, your finances, your peace of mind, your assignments, your calling. When protection is sealed, there is a restriction placed on chaos. What once entered freely must now seek permission, and permission is no longer easily granted. You may begin to notice that certain conflicts that once escalated quickly now dissolve before reaching intensity. Words that once triggered arguments no longer carry the same weight. External pressures that once invaded your sense of security feel distant. That is the evidence of a shield. Protection does not mean the absence of challenges. It means the limitation of damage. It means that even when something attempts to approach, it cannot penetrate as it once did. It means that interference meets resistance before it reaches your inner circle. There is also financial protection attached to deployed justice. If you have experienced instability, unexpected expenses, or financial strain connected to injustice, watch carefully. Stability may begin to restore gradually. Opportunities for increase may surface without aggressive striving. Wasteful drains may close. Protection does not always look like sudden wealth. It often looks like sustained order. Family dynamics may also shift. Misunderstandings may clear without prolonged confrontation. Children may display unusual calmness. Relationships may stabilize. If you are single, protection may show up as removal of someone who would have disrupted your peace. Do not mistake removal for loss. Sometimes protection comes disguised as distance. The seal over your household also guards your mind. Justice settles anxiety. When the verdict is clear in the unseen realm, mental turbulence decreases. You may find yourself less reactive to external noise, less triggered by old patterns, more confident in silence. That inner stability is a sign that your spiritual perimeter has been reinforced. But here is something important. Protection thrives in alignment. If you attempt to reopen doors that justice has closed, you weaken the seal. If you invite back conversations or environments that were removed for your safety, you interfere with the boundary that has been set. Respect what has been shut down. Honor what hath been redirected. The protection seal also carries a warning to those who intended harm. It signals that further interference will not proceed without consequence. This is not about retaliation. It is about restriction. Justice does not always remove people immediately, but it removes their influence. And influence is often the true battlefield. You may sense an increase in discernment now, a heightened awareness of what feels safe and what does not. A discernment is part of the seal. It is your internal alarm system becoming sharper. Pay attention to it. Trust it. If you pray over your household in the season, do so with confidence, not desperation. Declare peace with authority. Speak stability with assurance. You are not begging for protection. You are affirming what has already been assigned. There may also be a testing of the boundary. Sometimes, shortly after protection is sealed, a small attempt at disruption surfaces. It may look like a minor conflict or sudden pressure. Do not panic. It is often a final attempt to test whether the perimeter is truly reinforced. Remain calm. Do not overreact. The boundary will hold. Your responsibility now is stewardship. Maintain peace. Cultivate gratitude. Continue in integrity. Protection strengthens when the environment it guards remains aligned. February 21st marked more than a personal verdict, it marked territorial reinforcement. Your household has been marked with order. Your name hath been surrounded with oversight. Your future has been guarded with intention. And as days pass, you will begin to recognize that certain things simply no longer reach you the way they once did. That is not coincidence. That is coverage. Justice hath been deployed. And with it, a seal of protection now rests over everything connected to you. Now that justice has been deployed, protection has been sealed, and the narrow response window has passed, there is one final truth you must understand about what happened on February 21st. The test was not only about correction. It was about promotion. Hidden inside the pressure was preparation. Embedded within the tension was elevation. Most people see tests as obstacles. But in the spirit realm, tests are qualifications. They are not designed to break you. They are designed to measure you. And measurement always precedes increase. What you walked through was not random inconvenience. It was examination. When you encountered that disguised coincidence, it was not simply a reaction check. It was a capacity check. Could you handle justice without becoming arrogant? Could you receive validation without seeking revenge? Could you step into authority without misusing it? These were the deeper questions being answered. The fact that justice was deployed means the answers aligned in your favor. There is a blessing that follows every test passed in integrity. It is not always immediate applause. It is not always public recognition. Often, it is increased trust from heaven. And increased trust leads to increased responsibility. You may begin to feel a subtle expansion within you, a stronger sense of discernment, a calmer response to pressure, a clearer internal compass. That is not coincidence. When you pass a spiritual examination, your authority expands quietly. Promotion in the spirit does not always look like elevation in status. Sometimes it looks like elevation in stability. You become harder to provoke, harder to distract, harder to manipulate. That internal promotion changes how others interact with you. The test you faced exposed something powerful. You are no longer who you used to be. The reactions that once defined you no longer control you. The impulses that once dominated your speech no longer dictate your words. That transformation is the blessing. There is also external blessing hidden within this process. Justice clears obstacles that once blocked opportunities. You may notice new doors appearing without aggressive effort. Conversations may begin to shift in your favor. Individuals who once overlooked you may begin to recognize your value. But here is the deeper blessing: clarity. The test revealed who you can trust and who you cannot. It exposed patterns that no longer serve you. It highlighted areas where growth has already occurred. Clarity is one of the greatest rewards of spiritual maturity. Sometimes we pray for elevation but resist examination. We ask for increase but avoid accountability. February 21st, with the alignment of both. You were examined, and you were elevated. The blessing also includes confidence. Not loud confidence, but grounded assurance. You will find yourself less eager to prove your point, less desperate for validation, less reactive to criticism. That confidence is evidence that your identity has stabilized. There may also be restoration attached to this test. Areas that felt delayed may begin to accelerate. Relationships that were strained may experience unexpected healing. Finances that felt restricted may begin to stabilize. Justice does not simply correct, it compensates. And here's something many overlook: passing a test strengthens your future discernment. The next time a disguised moment appears, you will recognize it more quickly. You will not hesitate as long. You will trust your inner prompting without overanalyzing. The examination sharpened your awareness. The blessing hidden in this test is also spiritual credibility. When you speak now, there will be weight behind your words. When you advise others, there will be authority behind your insight. When you pray, there will be confidence in your tone. Because you have experienced review and come through a line. Some may still underestimate what occurred on February 21st. They may see it as an ordinary date. But you know differently. You felt the shift. You sensed the weight. You recognized that something invisible had become irreversible. That irreversible shift is your blessing. Do not minimize what you have endured. Do not downplay your growth. Do not return to behaviors that no longer reflect your maturity. The test was confirmation that you are ready for the next level of stewardship. And understand this clearly: heaven does not test without intention to elevate. There is no wasted examination. There is no pointless pressure. Every moment of restraint you chose was building capacity for something greater. As you move forward, carry yourself like someone who has passed review. Walk with steadiness. Speak with measured confidence. Continue choosing alignment even when no one is watching. The blessing hidden in the test is not temporary. It is transformational. It has repositioned you. It has refined you. It has qualified you. Justice hath been deployed. Protection hath been sealed. And promotion has quietly begun. We have walked through every layer of this revelation, and now we stand at the closing declaration. On February 21st, justice has been deployed. Archangel Michael confirmed that what you thought was a coincidence was in fact a test with a narrow response window. And now, after understanding the courtroom moment, the protection seal, the hidden blessing, and the urgency of alignment, you must leave this message with certainty, not confusion. February 21st was a dividing line. Before it, there was review. After it, there is enforcement. Before it, there was tension. After it, there is order. Before it, you question whether your silence and restraint were worth it. After it, you understand that every disciplined response was building your case. Justice has not been delayed. It hath been activated. And activation means movement. Even if you cannot yet see every visible result, the process is already unfolding. Outcomes are adjusting. Atmospheres are shifting. Boundaries are holding. You are not walking into uncertainty. You are walking into confirmation. There is peace available to you now that was not accessible before this verdict. Not because circumstances are instantly perfect, but because authority has spoken. When heaven declares something resolved, anxiety no longer has the same permission to dominate your thoughts. If doubt attempts to whisper in the coming days, remember this message. Remember the narrow window. Remember the disguised sign. Remember the courtroom image. Remember the protection seal. You are not imagining the shift. You are living in it. Some manifestations will be subtle. Others will be undeniable. Doors will close that no longer serve you. Doors will open that require courage. Relationships will clarify. Opportunities will align. You may even find yourself surprised at how naturally certain obstacles dissolve. And when that happens, do not become prideful. Remain humble. Remain grateful. Justice deployed is not a trophy, it is a trust. You have been entrusted with alignment. You have been entrusted with maturity. You have been entrusted with stewardship. For those who felt they stumbled during the test, take heart. Correction is still available. Realignment is still possible. Justice is not fragile, but your awareness must remain active. Continue choosing integrity. Continue guarding your words. Continue listening for subtle instruction. There is also something deeply reassuring about this moment. You are not alone in what you are navigating. The same authority that reviewed your case continues to oversee your steps. Protection did not end with the verdict. It intensified. You may begin to notice that fear has less influence over your decisions. That urgency has transformed into confidence. That confusion has been replaced with clarity. Those are signs that peace has taken residence. Peace after justice is powerful. It is not passive, it is secure. As this message comes to a close, understand this clearly. February 21st will not fade into memory as an ordinary date. It will become a reference point. A reminder of when unseen things shifted in your favor. A marker of when endurance turned into enforcement. And as you carry this revelation forward, seal it with agreement. Type Amen. IT is done in the comments. Blessing code 805 is now activated. Now hear this final declaration spoken over you. May divine justice continue to unfold without obstruction. May your household remain under protection. May your mind remain steady. May your words remain disciplined. May opportunities align without struggle. May exposure of truth bring restoration, not chaos. May your future be guarded from repetition of old cycles. What was reviewed hath been resolved. What was delayed hath been deployed. What was questioned has been confirmed. Walk forward with assurance. Stand firm in peace. Speak with quiet authority. Justice hath been deployed, and it will not be reversed. And as we close, remember that this mission continues beyond this moment. When you sow through Super Thanks, through membership, or through the PayPal link in the description or the QR code on your screen, you are extending this light to someone who is standing at their own narrow window right now. Scripture declares that those who sow in faith will reap in season. This is your season of alignment. I declare that as you give, heaven will respond. May increase meet obedience. May protection meet generosity. May clarity meet your household. Act with confidence. Move with purpose. Do not hesitate when prompted. This is not the end of your story. It is the beginning of a stabilized chapter. Justice has spoken. Peace has settled. It is done.